Hey, you big dumb idiot. Looks like you got yourself a saucy hand.
Yeah, I do.
Try yourself a Picasso boneless wing. Maybe next time.
Well,
Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Folks, welcome into a pre-game edition of the Crowd Assist podcast, brought to you by Trainwreck Sports and Outlet Liquor. What's your outlet? We have a very special guest here to start off the show, Ralph Malbrough from WWL TV contributor and with Saints Happy Hour. Ralph, really appreciate you coming on the show. And how you feeling today, man?
I'm feeling all right. I love our opening to our podcast because we got Sean Payton to insult us on Cameo back when he first did it. It was like $500. Now it's like $1,500. So we got it on the ground floor, and I like our opening. But y'all's opening is pretty damn cool. I like it, and of course, having a liquor sponsor that's top notch.
Well, that's special time to shout out to Outlet Liquor. You heard it right there. It's top notch having Outlet Liquor, one of the best liquor stores in the Western New York area. Get out there and get your case today of whatever it is your special game day tradition as well as holiday tradition, Ralph. So tell me, how are you feeling about this Thanksgiving game? You know, you're looking at it. Looking at it from our perspective, we see an incredibly beat up team. Bills fans are incredibly passionate, but at this time we've lost to a worse roster in Jacksonville, and we've crushed worse rosters. So it's just the most inconsistent team in the league is what you're getting tomorrow, from a 40-point win to a 3-point loss. There's no in between.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm 45, and I've seen some different Saints teams in my lifetime go off the rails for various reasons, right? This one is probably the most frustrating or the saddest because 3 weeks ago, they had beat Tampa, and I know they won that game, but to start that game, Jameis was going to cook that Tampa secondary. He was going to burn them to the ground in that game. I really believe that. He was like 5 of 7 to start, threw a touchdown to Traquan. So you really could look at the Saints, and maybe not think they were a Super Bowl team, but in the middle of the first quarter, we were like, hell yes. We are beating Tampa again, and we're going to win a 5th straight division title. And that was how we felt. 3 weeks later, we're like, are they going to be 7-10? I mean, this team, it's the injuries on this team it's insanity on offense. I mean, they've lost pretty much everybody. I mean, you know, and think about this. The best player on the team the last 3 weeks, guys, has been Marcus Davenport. He's been wrecking offensive lines. He's not going to play tomorrow. So I just don't know. Oh, and by the way, the Saints are on kicker number 6, who was kicker number 2, who they caught in training camp. So that's where we are with the Saints. It's the most injuries I think I've ever seen the Saints have. And it's not even like spread out among offense. It's just the entire offense is decimated, and that's what it is. And I'll say this to you guys. I know I follow Buffalo's on Twitter. I like Buffalo. You guys are fun. I think you guys are like bonded with the Saints. We have a lot of heartache. So like AFC, NFC, it's interesting. But I'm going to tell y'all, if y'all can't beat the Saints by 2 touchdowns tomorrow, like you're not a Super Bowl team. And that you can take that as an insult or whatever you want to say. But you guys should wreck the Saints tomorrow because the Saints, I would say probably right now the Saints offense is probably the 30th. If you looked at just what they're going to play tomorrow, who's going to play, it would be about the 30th ranked offense.
Incredible, Ralph. Really good nose and nuggets there from Ralph. I mean, you're looking down the injury report. You have Kamara out.
Yeah,
you have Ramczyk, Davenport, Passing Young. I mean, like it just doesn't end, right? And that's not including whoever's on IR.
It doesn't.
Like what's going?
Michael Thomas, who didn't play.
Michael Thomas, obviously Jameis.
That doesn't include Will Lutz, All-Pro kicker, who didn't do any kicking. It doesn't include Landon Young, who was a rookie, who the Saints love. By the way, he was a 7th-round pick, but they love him. My co-host is connected into the Saints, and he was like, Ralph, they love him. He played last week at left tackle, surprised everybody. Played pretty dang well for a rookie. Of course, because the 2021 Saints can't have nice things, he broke his foot, played the second half on a broken foot. He's on IR. He's out for the year. So it just never ends. And the thing with the Saints that's been sort of frustrating is the defense, which is supposed to be really good, and it has been at times, it got burned to the ground by Matt Ryan 3 weeks ago. And oh, by the way, if you haven't noticed, Matt Ryan has been a dog. I don't know if I can curse on this podcast, but he's been dog shit since that game. So, I mean, if I was Buffalo, I would feel pretty good about where you guys should be going into tomorrow.
Full expectations on Trevor Siemian. I know there's got to be with that contract of Taysom Hill. Is that the expectation? Is it too short of a week to play him much? Like, is that maybe it's just from our perspective, we're like, man, Trevor Siemian shouldn't play. We watched him in Buffalo a couple of years back, and you just couldn't find anything. The Bills' heavy, strong zone defense. Is this the last week for Siemian, or what's the idea there?
It's hard to know because listen, Taysom, he was active last week, but they were like, listen, he was only the backup quarterback. They didn't want to play him. He was a full go this week in practice, so he's healthy. It's hard to know because here's the thing with Siemian. Until last week against the Eagles, he had done really well. Now against the Eagles, he was awful. He threw 2 horrendous picks. He missed like about 4 times where guys were open and he just made the wrong read. I don't think they're going to start Taysom at quarterback tomorrow. I think what they will do is if the game is competitive and if the Saints can run the ball on you guys, which maybe or maybe not, you'll get a face full of Taysom. Like, I think the plan is for the Saints, they want to run the ball. And if they have a lot of third and shorts, goal to go situation, like Taysom is the man. And I know NFL Twitter, they make fun of Taysom, and rightfully so sometimes because of the contracts and stuff. But the thing about Taysom is he's been an unstoppable force for the Saints in the red zone. And, that's the key. Like the Saints, because if you look at him, Deontay Harris is their best receiver. Troutman, who's been horribly inconsistent, he finally had a good game, but he's probably out for the season. So like when the Saints get in for goal to go situations, like Taysom's the best guy they got. And I'll put it to you this way. I don't know if you watched the Tennessee game, right? Saints kicking situation was terrible, so they had to go for 2 against Tennessee to tie the game. They ran up. They had 3 tight ends in the game. They lined up and they were going to run Taysom power. Everybody in the stadium knew it. Vrabel looked at his defense and was like, I don't think I have the right defense called. He called timeout. Sean Payton went, fuck you, Mike Vrabel. We're running it again. And they lined up in it again. The Saints false started, so they couldn't run it. But that's where the Saints are in the goal line, guys. Like if you get first and goal to go, like it's going to be Taysom. It's going to be a power sweep. It's going to be to the right. And it's just, can you stop it? And like, I don't disagree with the Saints because like what else they got?
How many times do you think he'll carry it this week?
It depends. Tell me the score in the fourth quarter and I'll tell you.
So let's assume it's like a 24-21 game, something like that.
Oh, he's going to have 10. He'll have more than 10 touches. More than 10.
Because to be honest, as from a Bills fan perspective, I know you said it'd be embarrassing if they don't win by 2 touchdowns, but Bills Mafia is kind of in a fragile mode right now after getting their butts whipped by Indianapolis this past week and then losing to Jacksonville a couple weeks before. There's a lot of people up here in Buffalo that are afraid of not only losing the division to New England, but there's a lot of people concerned that they could miss the playoffs if they don't find a way to get back on track in the next couple of weeks. From the sounds of it, it seems like you guys are in the same situation right now in New Orleans. In your mind, who would be the better quarterback between Siemian or Taysom Hill? Is it Siemian, or is it simply they like the threat of Hill being a dynamic force whenever he comes in the game?
It's hard to know because here's the thing, Mike. I get what Sean Payton is looking at. Sean Payton looks at his roster and it's decimated. We went through it. where you guys had 2 guys on IR and the Saints list went on, right? I think Sean Payton, he looks at it and says, look, Trevor Siemian gives me a chance not to turn over the ball last week against Philly, notwithstanding. And he says, look, don't turn the ball over. Play as good as defense as we can play. Get the game to the 5-minute mark where it's 1 score. And then once it's inside of 5 minutes, it's just anybody's game. Somebody can make a play. My thing is, though, I just look at Buffalo and I look at you guys secondary, and it's good. It's good against elite receivers sometimes. The Saints have none of that. So I think Buffalo is just going to be like, hey, we're going to play vanilla defense, and we're going to see if y'all can run the ball with your beat-up offensive line. And if the Saints run the ball early, Buffalo will say, fine, we'll put a man in the box and stuff the run. And I just think Taysom gives the Saints a wild card kind of play where sort of not to compare him to Josh Allen because they're not in the same stratosphere as quarterback. But the thing that Josh Allen can do is you can defend the play perfect against Buffalo, and he can just be like, yeah, that defensive tackle, he just bounced off of me, and I'm going to run around, and I'm going to hit a 15, and I'm going to hit a 20-yard pass. And your defense did everything right. Like Taysom can do that, right? So it gives the Saints a chance to do interesting things, but also with Taysom, he fumbles and he makes bad reads. So I can see Sean Payton not wanting him to be quarterback. And listen, I mean, if you saw Taysom in the preseason, like he's not an NFL quarterback. He's just not.
Okay, that's fair enough. Like, we're very used to so Josh Allen's kind of like a version of that on steroids. Like you'll get that same type of thing where they'll run a power sweep. They had a great call against Indy early in the game that could have changed the game. False start, kind of same scenario you just went over on that goal line against the Titans there. Same situation the Bills had on a third or fourth down, and they got a false start and then a holding, and it just compounded.
Yeah.
But they literally called back-to-back powers on third down because they can't stop it. And I envision seeing more Josh Allen mobility tomorrow. It's something that they want to dial up. So we're in a similar mold there in how we kind of strategize those third and fourth downs, especially toward the goal line. I mean, Josh Allen, knock on wood, still hasn't turned the ball over inside the 20 ever in his career. It's just because you have that threat of running the ball.
Why have you guys had such an up and down? I know this is a Bills podcast, but I'm curious. What's the biggest thing that makes you guys struggle so much? Because you guys, it's like you went to Kansas City and it was like, oh my God, they're the best. They're the best team in the AFC. Like they got a defense. They're physical, and now it's like you only scored 6 against Jacksonville. You got run over, and it's just as far as a team that's all over the place. You guys are it. What's the one sort of constant that has you guys worried about the Bills?
So DVOA actually backs it up and says the Bills are the most streaky team they've ever recorded, from being able to pound Kansas City to losing to Jacksonville. Happens in an NFL season, as you know, from a Saints perspective, but just numbers wise, they have been literally the streakiest team ever recorded. And part of it is the offensive line. The Bills put a lot of assets into their defensive line. They're built to beat the Chiefs. That's what Brandon Beane said in the offseason was, we need to beat the Chiefs. We need to beat the Bucks. That's who we're worried about. These AFC South teams that love to run the ball. It'll come. They can't outscore us. That was literally the philosophy, right? And what happened, the offensive line lost their rookie right tackle, who has been, by all accounts, one of their best offensive linemen this season. And they were in shambles. In both those games, what is the constant there? The offensive line was in disarray, and Josh Allen, the other Josh Allen, took over in a really crazy game. Most people wrote off that Jacksonville game as just being weird. It was a strange one. We don't really see that kind of inconsistency from the offense very often. So then they went and slammed the Jets, which, everyone got right and everything was great. And then they went and basically did the same thing against a Colts team, which is the Jacksonville game all over, but with a better offense. And that's what you saw. Offensive line was a big issue. And the Bills were just negligent in getting out of nickel. They wanted to play nickel. They said, we have one of the best slot corners in the league in Taron Johnson, who can tackle extremely well. We're going to stack the box, but with light personnel. The Bills will shut down the best passers in the league. And if Kansas City keeps going to pass, they're not going to find much. And if you stick with 10 straight Jonathan Taylor runs and miss a tackle in the pouring rain, Josh Allen has been an inconsistent quarterback in elements. You drafted him to be good in elements. Now, where he has been good is in constant play, in a dome, in nice weather, down in Miami. Why does he dominate Miami? Because the weather's nice. And that's quite frankly, a lot of people think Buffalo has a weather advantage, Ralph. It doesn't. It has for the fans, we do. It does not for the players on the field. Stephon Diggs, used to domes. I mean, you have Josh Allen, who did play at Wyoming, but not at this high of a level in the weather. Same thing can be said. Florida Atlantic, the running backs are from Florida. I mean, it just doesn't happen. The weather's actually been a big factor in the Bills' home games.
Yeah,
Jacksonville game aside.
That's one of the things with the Saints the last couple of years, not tomorrow because they're so injured, but there's this sense of like, oh, the Saints are a dome team, and Saints fans would be like, dude, we're not a dome team. Like, we got Drew. He throws the ball 6 feet. We'll line up and we want to smash you. Like, you want it to be cold? You want it to be rainy? Like, cool. Like, it ain't 2011 with the Saints offense anymore, that's another bad thing for the Saints because inside the dome, it sounds like Josh Allen will be fine. So we'll see, but it's definitely going to be. I'm definitely fascinated to see, guys, if the Saints can run, because that's the only hope for the Saints. Like, the Saints, if the Saints are in this game in the fourth quarter, it'll be because of two things: either Josh Allen is terrible and turned the ball over a bunch and gifted the Saints a bunch of points, or the Saints have run for like 150 yards. Like, I do not see any other scenario where the Saints are competitive going into the fourth quarter. So that to me, that's an interesting thing. Like, what do you guys think the Bills will do defensively against the Saints?
Kev, you're better at that than me.
They're gonna stick to who they are, the Leslie Frazier cover 2 zone defense. I mean, they're gonna play nickel. Quite frankly, they've already seen Mark Ingram this year in Houston. We're able to, here's the problem: dominant quarterbacks struggle against the Bills, and they know that. Medium tier quarterbacks really struggle against the Bills, and bad quarterbacks throw 5 interceptions against the Bills, as their numbers show. Now, what they're doing is they've been beaten up by the league's best running backs because they don't have an answer. They didn't game plan against Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. Last year, they beat Jonathan Taylor in the playoffs and basically said, yeah, he'll get his. They're not going to have enough on offense to beat you. They did last week. Now, they'll make adjustments, but here's what they're going to do. They're going to play a cover 2 defense. They're going to make Simeon throw the ball. They'll take 5-yard Ingram runs if Mark Ingram even plays.
The Saints will take that all day. And the thing is, I know what your Buffalo is going to think is like, the Saints aren't going to go 12 plays against us. Like, they'll make a mistake. They'll have a holding penalty. But I'll tell you, like, if you are cool with the Saints running for 4.5 yards a pop, like, the Saints will do it until the game gets out of hand. Like, there is no doubt in my mind. That's why I wish if the Saints had both of their tackles and Kamara and Ingram, I would feel a lot better about this game, even with Simeon at quarterback, because I think that, like you guys say, that makes it an interesting matchup. I just don't know with the Saints' current personnel. Like, I don't know. Like, you say the Buffalo's soft against the run, but like the Saints' offensive line, like, I don't know if they can.
Well, you do roster Jordan Mills, right? Oof.
I wouldn't say the Bills are soft against the run. They obviously looked horrible against the Colts, but going into that game, they've been decent against the run on the season. It's just that when they are playing these elite running attacks like Tennessee and then the Colts, they're prone to getting exposed in those games because they're so set up to try to stop the pass. Now, you brought up Ingram. What are the chances he plays tomorrow? I saw that he was questionable. Is he sure?
I don't know. I know. I read that his knee injury has flared up, so it's questionable. And listen, if he doesn't go, it's Tony Jones Jr. and Ty Montgomery and Dwayne Washington. So I don't necessarily think Tony Jones is a huge drop off from Ingram. It's just that Tony Jones, he looked really great in the preseason, looked really good when the Saints curb stomped Green Bay early in the year, but then he got hurt and he hasn't really been back since. And the Saints traded for Ingram, and they brought Ingram back, and Ingram was fantastic. I mean, the Saints, if they wouldn't have turned the ball over against Philly, they were running the ball down Philly's throat. Like, it was there for them to make that a competitive game. So it'll be interesting. I would say Ingram is probably going to give it a go. tomorrow.
Why
But
not?
just because you play doesn't mean you play well. So
Or much. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Offensive line, before we got to get you out of here. Appreciate you coming on here. Brought to you by Outlet Liquors and Picasso's Pizza. Get out and get those boneless wings. Some of the best in Buffalo. But Ralph, the offensive line I have to ask you about. Armstead, are you expecting him to play? And if not, what's going to happen at the tackle position?
If Armstead doesn't go, like you said, it'll be James Hurst, who, by the way, James Hurst has been a really good signing for the Saints. He's a good backup tackle, and you guys know it. When you see these teams around the NFL, as me, a degenerate gambler, you see these teams missing 2-3 offensive linemen, like the Dolphins. They get their quarterback murdered. Like the Saints, that they went to Philadelphia, didn't give up a sack with the offensive line they had. It can be okay. The thing that, like I said, if Armstead doesn't go and you have Jordan Mills and Hurst, it becomes problematic because you can get by like 1 week where you have these backups, but the longer you play backup players, they eventually show you why they're backup players, right? It's the same thing with Trevor Siemian. He was good for 3 weeks, and then it's like, oh yeah, Trevor Siemian. That's why he never got a starting gig anywhere else besides Zimmer, because he's a backup. Like, so the longer you play these backup guys, the more it bites you in the butt, right? So that's the concern to me. Like, you just need Armstead back. And the thing about Armstead is he's not one, like, he can play injured and stay at that high level. He's like a cyborg. Like, if he goes tomorrow, he'll be fine. Like, he's been hurt almost his entire Saints career, but you can count the times on like 2 fingers where like he was questionable, played, and you were like, oh, Teron, you shouldn't have played. Like there's a game in like 2018 or 2019 where he had the flu and he played, and at the end of the game we thought he might die. We were like, oh, Teron, you shouldn't have played this game. But mostly he'll be like, whatever ailment he has, he plays well. So it'll be interesting. If I was you guys, I would expect to see a lot of 2 tight ends, and I would expect to see a lot of running early in the game.
A lot of Garrett Griffin, huh? Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, the Saints will also be missing Landon Young and Peyton Turner, some young players as well, that could have really been developing here on this roster. So limited offensive line. Even if those 5 do go, there's not much there. There's a worry if there's an in-game injury there too. So you got to be careful with those active game day roster spots, Ralph, because if you activate too many Mark Ingrams that aren't going to go and too many, players that are iffy and something happens, you start to get into a world of hurt real quickly. Yeah. So it is a game day decision, Ralph, for the Saints to kind of, and the Bills will err on caution. Like we'll watch Tremaine Edmonds go inactive. They'll do things like that to not, they love their game day roster spots. So I'm interested to see how the Saints play those 2 questionable positions. If they're like, yeah, we don't have a shot without him, or if they're like, we need some healthy players in case they can't go for the whole game. So, and
it'll be interesting too, because when you talk about passing, the Saints signed him, and we were like, he's just kind of a nobody. But the Saints defensive line coach is amazing. Ryan Nielsen, he's developed guy. Trey Hendrickson, who's really good for the Bengals, for instance. So it'll be really interesting to see, can the Saints get a pass rush without Passanio, without Davis?
Who starts there on that side?
What's that? Who will
start
It'll probably be Carl Granderson, which he was a guy we really liked because he had 5 sacks last year. He got bigger, and he was kind of a disaster against the run last year, but he had 5 sacks. This year, he's not a disaster against the run. He's kind of average, but his pass rushing is completely gone. So it's an interesting situation. I just don't. Man, this roster for Saints, I just don't see, unless Josh Allen puts the ball on the ground a bunch and there's like shenanigans where the Saints are getting weird special teams touchdowns or whatever. It's gonna be such a hard climb for the Saints tomorrow. And I was feeling good about it earlier in the week, but the injury report just came back bad for them, and it's just the Saints. They're just out of bodies.
Makes sense. And the Bills were bit by short-term injuries last week. That's another answer to your question. Couple key COVID players. Tremaine Edmonds didn't go. A couple of those are huge differences in the game, Ralph. Most of them will be back other than Spencer Brown tomorrow, their right tackle. So we'll see how much that matters. But last question for you is, give us a score prediction for tomorrow, and also tell us where the Bills fans can find your work if they want to follow along.
You can find me. Just follow us at Saints Happy Hour on Twitter. Find us. We have fun. I mean, we're the best Saints podcast. We have an incredible producer and do fun stuff. It's amazing. My score, I said earlier in the week, 34-13 Saints. That was when I thought a bunch of dudes that aren't playing, I thought they were going to play. So I'm going to say my heart is just going to say that the Bills aren't a Super Bowl team, and Josh Allen is going to help the Saints along, and the Saints are going to win 20-16, and you guys are going to be incredibly, incredibly frustrated and wonder how you lost the football game tomorrow.
Okay, fair enough. We appreciate the insight, Ralph. Thank you so much for making some time to be on here. It was really, really helpful to the show. We'll follow along your tweets. We'll follow along all your podcast stuff. Thank you so much, and really appreciate you making some time.
Appreciate you guys. And whatever happens tomorrow, make sure New England doesn't win the AFC East. That's the only thing I ask of you.
Tomorrow would go a long way for them, because if they get that, they take it back, and then they can take New England on Monday Night Football. So, Ralph, I love the insight, though. We're there with you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ralph.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was Ralph. Really good insight there, Mike. What did you take away from what Ralph had to say?
He seems to be just as down on the Saints right now as we are on the Bills. So it seems like it's a battle between two fan bases that are on, I don't want to say this word lightly, but suicide watch right now, having lost 3 in a row in New Orleans and 2 out of the last 3 in Buffalo. So whoever loses this, they're not feeling good about their chances going forward. So too early to say must win, especially in the Bills case where you're in a muddied up AFC. But for the Saints at 5-5, sitting at that final wild card in the NFC, they need it. And if they don't, it's going to start to be an uphill challenge for them.
I think the thing people forget is Josh Allen has stretches of play where he has struggled. And, quite frankly, it's nothing new. Last year they had a 3-3 stretch. What is this year's stretch? 3-3, right? Smack dab in the middle of your season. This is really where they come out of it or they don't. And I think this is the kind of game you're hoping for, that they come out of it. The Bills have every card dealt to them, minus Spencer Brown and Star Lotulelei. Every card has been dealt to them to be able to execute. I mean, when you look at this game preseason, you're talking about the Saints with Jameis Winston, with Alvin Kamara, with
possibly Michael Thomas. Yeah. So
with both of their defensive ends. They're missing their second and their third defensive ends tomorrow. There's no rotation there. Although you still have Cam Jordan, the 2 and the 3 are out. You just get shallow quickly in the NFL. And that really helps out an offensive line that needs it tomorrow. So there's definitely, you look at this game and then all of a sudden it's Trevor Siemian. It's not even Taysom Hill.
Mark Ingram. Yeah.
It's Mark Ingram, who was on Houston earlier this year, may or may not even play. You look at that, and then we're not even talking about the most important thing. They're missing potentially both of their star tackles and their guards. You just cannot ask for any. If you can't get it done in a dome on Thanksgiving, no weather elements, against a pretty poor, at this stage, poor Saints team, it might be it. He's right. It might be it for them. I mean, it might be
this
the
is really
calling card that they're now playing for the wild card all of a sudden, not the 1 seed.
Yeah, this is a game that Buffalo needs to take care of business. I know people look at the Saints and they play them up because they've been great for a long time, but a lot of that was because of Drew Brees. And right now they don't have Brees, and even Winston, who was doing all right to begin the year, losing him is a noticeable downgrade at the quarterback position. You don't have Kamara, who is one of the most unique threats in the entire NFL. That takes away a ton from their offense from a passing perspective and running perspective. Mark Ingram has been a decent fill-in, but he might not even be 100%. You just look at it, it's lined up for the Bills to win. The only way I really can't see them doing well is if the Saints defense has an outstanding
Jacksonville
game,
did. Jacksonville's did.
Which is possible. I think the one thing that's been interesting about this Bills team this year is fans want to point out to a bunch of stuff like, oh, they're soft, they can't stop the run, or some people want to hammer Josh for not being that great. A lot of it has just been situational things where Jacksonville, they just they couldn't block them, and you lose by 3, and you still have a chance in the final seconds to win the game. Pittsburgh, a blocked punt. Tennessee, you can't get a 4th down. For as frustrating as 6-4 is, they're a couple plays away from being 9-1. It's not like the Bills have played poor football this year. It's just that we're coming off their poorest effort in maybe a year.
Well, talk about it, Mike. Yes, let's talk about it for a second. 9-1. They didn't deserve to beat the Colts. That game wasn't going the Bills' way in those elements, in that situation with those players on both sides. That's a loss. However, beside that game, there's conceivable
10-0 lead against Pittsburgh. You had
the ball. Block
yeah. I mean, and people I think are sometimes too quick to jump on them. Is there signs for concern? Yeah, absolutely. This team could technically miss the playoffs if they lose the next couple games, fall to 6-6, and then put themselves in a tough situation. But there's 7 teams that make the playoffs now, and you still have the Jets, Falcons, and Panthers remaining on your schedule. I think 10-7 is going to be good enough to get the 7th spot. So if you look at those 3 games as wins, you really just need to win one of your other 4 games, which is New Orleans, 2 against New England, and 1 against Tampa Bay. I think this is the game that's lined up to win it, and I still believe the New England games are winnable.
You just need to win one New England game because they lost to the Dolphins.
And that kind of sets you up. So I think it's easy to overreact to their last performance, but it's still all right in front of them. The Bills have done great. I mean, I guess the thing that frustrates people is they see them thoroughly dominated on the ground, and they're like, how is that possible? But as you kind of said earlier, this was a team that was set up to stop the pass and to throw the ball on offense. That's the modern NFL. It's a passing league. And sometimes you go in one direction, you lose a little bit in another direction. If you asked anybody, how do you win, they'd say throw the ball. So if you're going to struggle running it a little bit and struggle stopping the run at times, you take it if that means that you're going to be good in those other areas. And unfortunately, when you play a team like the Indianapolis Colts that's red hot and has the best running back in the NFL, better than Derrick Henry, in my opinion, at this moment, it's going to be tough once in a while.
Yeah, I think what's a good point, Mike, is let's finish that. We started with Pittsburgh, and they were a blocked punt away and really dominated that game. Another weird elements game. 3-2 at home, the Bills are now. You really got to think about it for a second. So you take that one in. Then you have a loss on a slip in Tennessee, like literally a slip. I'm sorry. They slipped. They win that game. Then you have a loss on like 4 chances they could have beaten Jacksonville, and just they drove down the field, and then there was mystery penalties. There were things. That game was one of the worst officiated games of the year. There were some things there that went wrong. And then the Colts game, they just lost. However, every win that they have, there was no questionable plays that would have lost them the game. Like you can usually say, well, yeah, but you would have lost to Houston and Washington and this and that. You can't do that. In the Bills situation, they have the biggest, one of the best score differentials in the league, and then play 1 possession games. So yeah, I think I can say that the Bills could easily be 9-1, 8-2.
It's like a luck factor. And I know it's impossible to measure luck, but if you were to look,
NPOM does in basketball.
I don't have a formula off the top of my head, but it's kind of, I would say it's definitely a luck factor situation, because in the wins, for the most part, outside of a couple games, they've been pretty dominant. Now they've been dominating lesser opponents, but still Miami's winning games now, and even Houston just beat Tennessee. So they're struggling in these close games to make that play. It's not that they're giving a game away. It's that they are not making the play. And there was an article in The Athletic recently that kind of showed all the Bills' metrics line up right where you want. The biggest kind of difference from this year to last year is that last year it was our offense that was the dominant part of this team. And right now they've fallen kind of more middle of the pack, while our defense last year was middle of the pack, and now they're the dominant unit on the squad. The Bills haven't been as good on 3rd and 4th down. And Josh, I hate the word regression in this situation, because people are going to say, well, he's regressed. He's not performing at the level he did last year. He's still performing at a very high level, but the fact that he is slightly lower than where he was last year does hurt, especially when in close games when you have an offense that's designed to outscore opponents, you're
Right.
scoring 15 or 18 or 21 or whatever the case is, instead of getting to that 30 point. Like, you never would have envisioned before the year that you would lose a game 9-6 to the Jaguars or score low 20s against Pittsburgh. You would have thought, okay, we're going to safely get enough to win those games. So it's not that Josh has been bad. It's just that just a little bit off enough to make a difference in the win column.
Yeah, and to be honest, if the Bills lost, they had a vision in their head that they would lose like that that Tennessee game, where it's just like they slipped. They both scored a bunch of points. The Tennessee offense was healthy for one game this year, and it was against the Bills. It was the only game they had both their receivers and running backs. And that's how they expect. So that they expected to lose on a slip in the 30s. If that happens, it is what it is. That wasn't going to happen much, and it hasn't. It's happened once. However, what they didn't anticipate happening was weather elements, block punt loss, special teams. Weather elements getting ran down their throats for 1 million touchdowns, some luck factor there for Indy to do what they did, including Isaiah McKenzie slipping and hitting the ground, not being touched, and fumbling because hitting the ground and fumbling. I mean, it's just unless special teams play change the game,
because that changed that entire game. Sure, the Bills got blown out after that point, but you think about it, 17-7, not a good situation to be in, but you got 2+ minutes to try to drive down the field, make it a 3-point game, and then you would have the ball to start the second half. Instead, you're down 24-7. It just, at that McKenzie fumble, it destroyed everything. Not that they were.
Well, that's randomly why Marquez Stevenson is all of a sudden randomly back after his short-term foot injury that turned into 12 weeks. Why is he practicing this week? Well, that would make a lot of sense why. So we'll see if he becomes active next game. Potentially against the Patriots, to see McKenzie's last gasp here, or just to get more speed on the field, Mike. But yeah, I mean, you got to talk about that in terms of like, this is the game. I put the offense on the field first, go up in this game 7-0 after trailing the entire game last week. Put your offense on the field to start, script some plays, make them make decisions from behind. Don't allow a penalty. Don't allow certain situations to put the Saints up early and you having to chase. I want to put the offense on the field. I want to make a statement on Thanksgiving. I want to stop deferring and hoping for this back-to-back point situation, which can work against the Jets and the Dolphins. I want you to go on national TV on Thanksgiving night and take the lead, take the ball. Why are you worried about situations needing back-to-back scores? Like, that's great, but it's just all, it's just all smoke show. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't matter that, yes, you can still get the ball to end the half the same way that you could. It's just, you started scoring 7, you're up 7 points in that situation. Yes, you'll gladly trade that for them to have the ball in the third quarter. You can look at it both ways. Mike, I need to see them take the ball and assert themselves in a situation tomorrow to go ahead and make the Saints make decisions on what they want to do with their scripted drives, and get the Bills in a good situation rather than playing from behind the entire day. But that Colts game could go different with a couple of different things, the fumble being one of them. The false start was a first down easily and was a false start on Cody Ford, just continues to haunt the team, and then a holding on Mitch Morse. And now you're getting punting. Now you're in a punting situation, or excuse me, you threw a pick. So, really easily, that could have been at least 3 to 7 points. Now you're talking about, Mike, without that fumble going into half, it could easily be 17-17, 17-13.
Because they were moving the ball. In the first half, they just didn't get that many possessions. And one thing I do want to see also this tomorrow is, I feel that Josh Allen steps up in these big moment games where the spotlight is on him. There was so much talk when he was drafted that he was going to be that he was never going to pan out, that he was going to be a parody of a prospect. And I feel like when he is in the national spotlight, he tries to basically show the nation, yeah, you guys were all wrong with your observations and your thoughts on me. Most memorably, obviously, the Dallas game was really coming out party on Thanksgiving in 2019. But there's been so many moments, even late against Pittsburgh, the previous 2 years, and in the playoffs last year. And I feel like we're going to get that Josh Allen tomorrow that's angry, that is pumped. I'm not saying that because they lost to Indianapolis, but I have a feeling he wants to show the country, yeah, we're 6-4. We're not happy about it. I hear the rumblings that maybe I had my season last year was a one-time fluke. You know what? We're going to go out and we're going to we're going to put 35 on the Saints. And you know what the thing when you look at this New Orleans defense is they're unbelievable against the run. I believe they're third in the NFL against the run. They shut teams down, but they are susceptible against the pass. They've had some games against opposing offenses that have lit them up. Just looking at some of the numbers right now, they've had a game against the Giants where they allowed 402 passing yards. A couple weeks ago, Atlanta 332, Tampa Bay 350, New England with Mac Jones 251, Carolina 294. There is the ability to pass on the secondary, and with some of the players that they're missing on with Davenport and stuff like that, there might be some opportunities, hopefully, for this offensive line to hold up and give Allen enough time to make some plays down the field. So this needs to be a coming out party is essentially the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I mean, those are fair comments, Mike. It needs to be a coming out party. Everyone's like, oh, I'm so glad the Carolina game's at 1 on Sunday. I'm like, why does everybody live in this world like we're still in the early 2000s of where we get blown out on national TV, where we lose? I mean, all of our national TV games have been great. We slipped and fell. That's like the only downfall that they've had in national TV in years. Still played pretty good as a team that game, minus some defensive lapses and a holding that would do an 80-yard Derrick Henry touchdown. I mean, outside of that, they played some pretty good football. What is this world that you think we play bad at 1 o'clock? We play bad at 1 o'clock right now. They lost to Jacksonville. They lost to Indianapolis. What world do they play better at 1 o'clock on Sundays? What games are you watching?
On the schedule to be flexed. That game was there to be flexed, and 1 month ago, I would have told you 100% it was
because Indy and New England stole it.
Indy and New England stole it, and to be honest, you could have an argument that
isn't that awful?
The Browns in Vegas might not deserve it because the Browns play.
I heard someone told me there was different pools, Mike, where 4 games are in one pool and 4 games are in the other. I don't know if that's true, but that's what someone tweeted.
All I heard was that there were 5 games and that 2 of them were moving to Saturday. This is what I know about Vegas. They're crumbling right now. By the time they get to that game against Cleveland, they're not going to be entertaining. Their offense, since Ruggs has left, has not been fun to watch. Cleveland is going in the wrong direction. They almost just lost to Detroit, and that's with Baker Mayfield in the game, who's just honestly just looks horrible right now. They are going to have a dilemma in Cleveland at the end of the year, especially after playing Baltimore in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if Cleveland's going to even be a playoff team at the end of the year. And then the Colts, like you said, the Colts and Patriots, they just have gotten hot, and they're the ones who ended up getting the game. But yeah, I agree with you, Kev. We got to stop being afraid of having primetime games. It's fun to have these games. Now, the only complaint I have is I wish we had more of these games in Buffalo. Showcase our fans across the nation in primetime at night. Because we've had so many stinkers, games against Miami, the Jets, Houston, Washington, where really they've only gone to small audiences for the most part outside of the Tennessee game and the Kansas City game. So it would have been nice to get a primetime audience, but I understand why the NFL didn't pick it. And I do believe I read something that the Colts touchdown drive, was that the first time the Bills have allowed an opening drive touchdown? I don't even remember the last time they
only allowed 10 points in the first quarter in general, I believe.
Yeah, so disappointing with that, but
I mean, that would go to why they would rebuttal Kevin by saying they haven't allowed a first quarter touchdown. I mean, to me, it's like, well, I think you need to assert yourself on national TV and take it and get it done. But I'm all for primetime games. Like, why do you not want the league watching you? That's how you got to number 1 overall. That's why people think you're good. What is this 1 o'clock, like, Stockholm syndrome that people have? Like, no, get off of it.
I think it's 2 things. 1, people like their routines. They like waking up, tailgating, going to the game. It's a simple thing. It's routine. People like to stick in their routines. And I think the number 2 thing, there's some of that Buffalo fear syndrome where Buffalo sports fans are always afraid that the worst thing that could happen will happen. And during the drought, they just had so much failure when they were in the big spotlight that I think there's this fear that if they play in primetime games that they're going to stink it up and that they feel more comfortable against playing in the normal Sunday at 1. But I guarantee you none of that stuff, it doesn't impact the players. They just do their thing. They go out on the field and they play ball. And even with the 6-4 record, I'm still confident in this squad and would love to watch them in primetime because I still think if you base it off the metrics, they're one of the better teams in the NFL. And you look at the odds, you look at the Super Bowl odds and everything, and they still support that. Most of America still thinks the Bills are a team to be reckoned with. It's more so us in Buffalo are getting a little nervous because we're getting a little bit of a sense of adversity, and we're afraid. What if this team is not what we thought they were?
If they win back-to-back, they're all of a sudden in commanding position again with most of the tiebreakers in the division. Like, who cares what their AFC record is? All you need to do is make sure that you take care of New England, and you basically clinch the tiebreaker over them with one win because they lost to Miami.
If you ask Bills fans, are they going to beat New England on Monday Night Football?
The answer is no.
I bet you, yeah, most people I know would probably say no at this moment. And I understand why. New England, they're similar a little bit to Indianapolis. Good running team. Solid defense, quarterback that doesn't need to take over, but can make some plays here and there. But I read a good point this week online, and it was talking about how Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, whenever they get something pounded to them, they're normally great at making adjustments the next game. And they were talking about how the Bills, I believe it was last year, were struggling against the run for the first half of the season. And then if you do the second half of the season, things got drastically better. And I think this might have been the performance that the defense needed going into New Orleans, going into New England to really shake things up and realize, okay, guys, we've been stellar all year. We've been great against opposing quarterbacks, but we're going to go up against a couple teams that really like to pound the rock. We need to get tougher. We have to change things up a bit. And also, like you mentioned, not having Tremaine Edmonds, not having Star Lotulelei, those are huge subtractions. There was going to be a natural, probably regression on the field, regardless of who they face, just because those are two of your better players.
Sure. And I think what needs to be said, too, is that the weather element played a role into their hand. Everyone's like, well, dude, you don't need this. You don't need that because they're a dome team. The way it's not about where they play their home games. Like, you guys need to understand this. It's about the style of game plan that they implement as a running football team. The Bills are a pass team who stop the pass. Best in the league at stopping the pass. One of the best in the league at throwing the ball. Elements hurt the Bills, period. I don't care what year you think this is. I don't care what year you want it to be and what team you think is here. If they're running the K gun,
well, what about
Jim
Kelly, man? What
about Thurman Thomas? Yeah. What about all those glory years? It is 2021, about to be 2022. Protect your assets. Play the country's best sport in the most optimum conditions possible to maximize your assets. It's a pretty simple philosophy. I'm sorry that you like standing in the snow. I didn't, as a player, like playing in the snow, and I'm from here. I don't know how the Florida running backs or players across from different southern states that are used to warm weather would have any interest in playing in that. Like, and even worse was the situations, and not the snow games. It's the situation with this rain and wind that is random. Look at what happened where the ball was on the ground. We just happened to turn it over. It could have been them, but they run the ball with a good running back. That's the problem. It benefits their game plan. It gives them plus 30% roughly. Something along those lines. You don't just say they play in a dome. Well, good for them. The problem is when they play in a dome, they're at a disadvantage to teams that can come in the dome and throw it all over them. Like their poor secondary allows. I've seen all these tweets about like Rocky Sin and all these players, and it's like he got dunked on when he got thrown over. The Bills just didn't have it going on, and the weather was just not great. That's the point. Like, you can run the ball in these elements and limit your risk. That game plan favors you. The weather allowed your game plan to be better. Now you make changes. That's the problem, Mike. It's not
that obvious. Shouldn't that be obvious though? Like, you're a passing team. Another team is a running team. So even though they're a dome team, they know how to run the ball. So
no, it's not. It's because they play in a dome. It's not obvious to people.
So who cares about the dome part? Yeah, they come to Buffalo. It rains, it's windy, it's cold. Well, they can still run the ball because that's what they do. Except for the one thing the Bills do, throw the ball, is impacted because suddenly you're not as precise with the accuracy on the ball.
No one could throw the ball.
So you can't get the same zip. So now you're trailing in a game. Well, how are you going to come back? You can't run the ball against them because you're a passing team. And dude, it's so obvious. And it's just that fan lingo. I don't know if everybody believes it when they see it, but it's just stuff that's been passed down from generation to generation. We believe it as truth, but you're right. I mean, if we had an inferior team, you like the weather because it helps you have a chance to stay more competitive. So when we sucked, it was nice having the bad weather because you thought, well, maybe we could pull off an upset today. But we're not the team that is doing the hunting. We're the hunted right now. So if you're the team being hunted, you want it to be ideal weather conditions every time you play because you believe you are the better team on the gridiron. Simple as that.
It's fair. The game plan favored them. That game does not go that way if we see them again in the playoffs in a very likely situation, 3-6, 2v7, 4v5 matchup even. There could be a situation where we see the Colts again and it might not go that way. You can't go for 100 yards and think you're going to win.
It changes quickly. Think about New Orleans, Tampa Bay last year. New Orleans kicked Tampa Bay's butt twice in the regular season. Playoffs.
You just can't think you're going to win throwing 105 yards.
Even the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay lost to Kansas City pretty badly in the regular season. Then they crushed Kansas City in the playoffs. So Tampa Bay had 2 playoff victories against teams that they went a combined 0-3 last year in the regular season. All that matters is those 4 weeks when you get into January football. And that's what all Bills fans need to realize. It's just get in. Just get in and take care of business. This is still a team that can compete with any team in the NFL. Just find a way not to choke it, and I think they'll be fine.
Absolutely, Mike. Well, it's time. We have really had a great show here starting. Just great Saints analysis, talking about the game. Now we need to do score predictions, Mike, because this is our pregame show here on a Thursday Thanksgiving, on a Thursday Wednesday evening, one of the biggest drinking nights in the world. Stay safe out there, anyone listening. Please be safe and responsible tonight. Mike, give me your score prediction. We heard, what was his prediction? 21-16? 21-16?
He said he was following his heart, so I don't know if that was an honest score prediction or if it was
I mean, there's a world that score prediction exists because he's predicting basically
like
the Jags
Ryan
game.
prediction for UB.
Yeah. Rob Ryan prediction. He's predicting the Jags game again, which I mean, it is in the realm of possibilities.
If that happens again, then you got to start questioning Josh Allen a little bit because you're paying him the big bucks to not let that happen.
Can't go 6 points, 15 points, 15 points. That just
so the line is steadily increased throughout the week, especially with the Saints injuries.
Which means they're going to cover.
So I have a belief that it's going to be close. My gut tells me it's going to be like a 24-21 type game, Bills. I don't think at any point they're going to be pulling away or feeling safe in this game. I can't trust the Saints offense right now. They are missing too many pieces. Taysom Hill does give me a little bit of fear in the red zone. Like he said earlier, good luck to the Bills defense stopping a physical down your throat runner. They're basically like Josh Allen running at you in the red zone. But I think the Bills are going to make just enough plays. Like I said, I think this is Josh Allen trying to get a good performance in the primetime lights. So I'll take the Bills 24-21.
I just don't see enough on the Saints defense until I see it one last time where the Bills just struggle against a pretty bad team. Now, that's not to say some of these guys could get healthy and they could be dangerous down the stretch. I'm sure it's possible. I cannot look at Trevor Siemian, who isn't even Trevor Lawrence, who struggles against cover 2. I've tweeted earlier, he's one of the worst zone quarterbacks in the league. He's terrible against it. He lost his job in Denver because of it after starting like 3 or 4-0. I can't remember exactly. Sean McDermott feasts against quarterbacks who are bad against the zone. That's what you have today. And that's the kind of matchup you have to break down. And for me, it's like, if he can't read the cover 2 and he struggles and he doesn't take what's his and he doesn't have Kamara, maybe he doesn't even have Mark Ingram, doesn't have a tight end, has a banged up offensive line, even if it's played decent being banged up, fine, you can prevent him from getting sacked. That doesn't mean he's going to make the right reads in a cover 2 defense that the Bills are going to contain. I just can't predict them to lose this. I think this is potentially even a roster that is on par with Jacksonville or worse. And I don't have the Bills in a dome in perfect elements on prime time. You have everything going for you, in my opinion. Everyone's against you again. To me, I've got 30-17 in this game. I have them just covering the over and also covering the spread. But as that spread goes up, Vegas is looking forward more and more forward to it covering. So that's what's interesting here, is that they're going to push the limit on the spread, and eventually maybe they'll backdoor into it, but they're going to cover the 6 or 7 points that it's going to end up being at, Mike. So to me, I think they get it done 31-17. I just don't see enough. And he's right in saying that if Josh Allen puts the ball on the ground, or are there special teams problems again? Yeah, the 31-17 turns into 21-17 really quickly, and turns into 21-16 them if enough of it goes wrong. So I can't have those lapses. I need them to dominate. I need them to take advantage of a pretty poor front seven, an average beside Marshawn Lattimore, and pretty average back four. And they need to take advantage of a defense missing some of their better players. I mean, they have average linebackers. They have one player on the defensive line. Make sure you're chipping him and make sure you're giving him help from Dawson Knox and Devin Singletary, Mike. But I can't predict them to lose this game. I could go multiple ways next week after watching this game against New England. They get 11 days to prepare for New England. So we're going to be right back at you next week with a pregame show. We're going to be back at you with a live edition from Monday Night Football next week. But back-to-back primetime games here, and the Bills need to have these two. You can wash away that Jacksonville and Indy game if you win back-to-back games and put yourself in position. Yes, you lost the 1 seed, but you're still right there for the 2. And that's where you need to be, is maybe getting a game against against a Bengals or a Browns or someone like that. That is a lot more winnable than having to see that Indy team again, or having to see, anyone at the best wild card team who slips into the 5 and be a Chargers team. You really need to make sure, if you can't secure the 1, this is the way you secure the division and the 2 seed. So, Mike, any last nuggets for tomorrow?
Just hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving, gets a lot of good food, and doesn't fall asleep before the Bills game.
There it is. Hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving and prepares for Sunday or Thursday night football in national TV. Enjoy your food. It's not going to get ruined, at least, but at least you'll be able to enjoy a great Thursday night game and have plenty. If they win, get to rest up and they get back Star Lotulelei. They could get back Spencer Brown. They get back Marquez Stevenson. Things begin when they get back John Feliciano. Things begin to turn pretty interesting if the Bills can win and basically be at full strength, missing nobody deep into the season. So that's what they're after tomorrow, and take back the division. And it starts with a win against a roster that you need to take advantage of. The Bills were handed this opportunity to win tomorrow, Mike. So from Outlet Liquors, from Picasso's Pizza, everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Just 12 years ago, almost to the day, did the Bills fire Dick Duran. So we're going to leave you with a nice little song as we all take off. So we'll catch you all later, and good night now.
Gerard.